in the position I'm in, like I'm not in the position to point fingers and point at this person and say you did this wrong, or point at that person you did this wrong. It's not really the point. I guess the whole point of the blog post was kind of to highlight a bigger issue that's at hand, especially within the weight cutting world, and that's clinical incompetence and gross misinformation that exists around the place. And what happens when they are prevalent is not good. Is these bad things happen? Is when you get people or practitioners or whatever you want to call them, where they don't have those two things. They don't have the correct information and they don't have the clinical competence. They put people's lives at risk, because this process of everything that I just spoke about, even if you do it, I think we do it pretty well. Like there's a lot of ways, and there's a lot of teams that around the world that I work with closely, and I think they do it pretty well as well. But none of us do it perfectly. I don't think there's a way to do this perfectly. The way that we do it well is through risk management, and it is through everything that I just spoke about. Is that you assess the person's physiology, you assess this, and at every step of that, you're going, okay, well, what impact is this having on this person's health and safety? What impact is this having on the next fight and the next fight and the next fight after this? So you need to put it in that context of like, yes, this is inherently unsafe, but there's certain steps we can go through as professionals, and we can lean on our professional knowledge and our clinical competence and our clinical training to manage these risks. And I think the whole episode that happened on this is just a really good example of what happens when you don't do that. And it's a real risk. And I think we are partly to blame for this, because the way we are on social media is that we put this out, and I think people get a bit comfortable with it, and they go, hey, look, like TFD, like Geordie, Jack, Ryan, all these guys, man, they're taking these guys through these really cool cuts, and look how simple they do. And it's like, yes, but there's a lot of behind the scenes, like what I spoke about, that goes on with that. Like we might be getting these guys down to weight, but at the end of the day, we have weekly team meetings, and we're bringing up high risk cages. We put our guys into green, orange, and red zones. And if anyone is in like an orange zone or higher, we talk about them every week. We're on a weekly meeting. We're going, okay, what are we doing this week to manage these guys? And what are we doing to keep them safe, and blah, blah, blah. So I guess for this story, I guess what I wanted to get across with it is that I don't really want to point fingers and say this person really stuffed up, or this person really stuffed up, or this athlete didn't listen to us and they didn't. It's not really the point. The point I wanted to get across is that unless we do something and we kind of put these practices in place, or we do those two things, is where we increase education around this, and we do more things like this, where we talk to coaches and athletes and commissions and other things, and we talk about the different processes that are involved in like a universal assessment tool that we can use for coaches. Like if Dennis, you get a fighter or something, and you can go, okay, I'll put them through this assessment piece, and okay, you know what, when you've gone through this, no, you can't actually make that weight on 3 weeks notice. We need to be highlighting those things and starting that conversation and going, okay, we need better education, and then we need better like practical application of this, and we need to kind of stamp out this clinical incompetence, because it's kind of everywhere. And this is another thing, and the reason I wanted to write this article is because this is not like the first time it's happened. Like a few weeks ago, I had one of my very good friends, like a good friend of mine, and he's a client of mine, still a current client, but he has a huge gym, has hundreds of fighters under him. And he called me and he went, man, like this girl's not in a good spot. She's in the sauna. She's been in here for like 24 hours. She's just sweating, like she's in and out of consciousness. It's just, I was like, what the heck? And then spoke through it. And then she's working with one of these weight cut specialists who have done, like a 3-day course on this. And again, I'm not pointing the finger and saying like, power to you. If you want to change your career and you want to, go down the nutrition pathway, and you want to empower people and you want to help them and you want them to be the best version of themselves, I completely get that. That's why I'm in nutrition. I completely get that. The thing is when you want to apply that concept into the weight making sports or weight category sports, where athletes manipulate their physiology, they manipulate their body composition to get down to weight, there are inherent risks that are involved. And you have to have a certain level of education, certain level of training, a certain degree of clinical competence to be able to assess those risks, manage them, and then monitor them. And that's not something you're learning in a 3-day course, because the really sad thing, and I think this is the really sad thing, and this is something that me and my team, we had a meeting, we spoke about this, is that anyone in our team, we could be in the other position. We could be on the other side of that coin, where it's us, they're getting told, we've taken someone through this, and it's one of our athletes that is, ended up in ER. We put a lot of measures in place so that doesn't happen. But the thing is like not everyone has those measures to put in place. And the worst part about it is that ignorance is bliss. That's what I think the worst part is. Ignorance is bliss is because when you do these short courses, you learn all the fun things, you learn all the cool things. Yes, like cutting weight isn't necessarily rocket science. Like really any person off the street can cut water, can cut carbs, can cut salt, can run in a sauna suit. What they don't teach you is the other side of that. What happens when all that goes wrong? What happens, when your fluid volume depleted? What happens when you get cardiac arrest? Who do you call? What position do you put that body in? They go into a seizure. What happens? You don't get taught all of that in these like 3-day courses. And so it's that risk management. And then the really sad thing about it is that what's probably going to happen is 1 or 2 people in this whole situation are probably going to get a pretty hefty lawsuit to them. And while their intentions were very good and they were just trying to help someone, this could very well be the start of a very, very bad chapter in their lives where they're going to, be in a very dark place, and all because they made a couple of bad decisions. And like, again, I'm not the one that I don't want to point at them. I think there's probably been a bit of unnecessary finger pointing over social media for these guys and whatnot. And I think that, yes, they made a bad decision, but I think it's not about pointing the finger and saying this person did that wrong, this did this. I think it's a gross, over-encompassing problem that we need to like really as a community sit down and go, okay, well, the reality is that this is going to continue to happen as long as there's misinformation out there and clinical incompetence with practitioners. So how do we fix that? We go around and we provide better education, and we stamp down on these 3-day courses where people think they're qualified to be taking someone through this and manipulating people's physiology. So I guess that was the whole basis behind writing the blog.